A suspected tornado flipped a mobile home off its foundation Sunday in Louisiana, killing a mother and her 3-year-old daughter as a powerful storm system swept through the south, damaging a handful of homes and businesses in Texas. Parts of Arkansas and Mississippi were also under a threat of tornadoes, thunderstorms, large hail, and flash flooding through Sunday night as the severe weather pushed east, forecasters said. National Weather Service warned that it was a particularly dangerous situation. A fire chief in the affected area said there were several structures with severe damage.
The size and power of the mudslides evident in the devastation they left behind. It's being described as a water avalanche. Towers of water and mud formed as rivers burst their banks after days of heavy rainfall. The mudslides crashed into 17 neighbourhoods in the southern city of Mocoa at around midnight on Friday. Those in its path had little warning.
We've lost a baby. He's gone missing. A little baby. We can't find him anywhere.
I haven't heard from my relative. All I know is that her husband grabbed her by the hand, but he couldn't hold on, and the current swept her away.
The lists tell a story of unimaginable loss. 8 years, 10 years, 14. These are the names of the missing children. A father touches a name in his grief, the closest he can get when he has little idea of where his child may now be.
Mi sobrina.
My niece, she says. Like so many others here, she is desperate to search for the missing youngsters, but given the force of the mudslides, most simply don't know where to start. Mocoa is now the centre of a major search and rescue operation, with at least 1,100 soldiers and police picking through the debris. It's the provincial capital of Putumayo and home to 40,000 people. The water avalanche knocked out power in half the province. President Juan Manuel Santos visited Mocoa and has declared a state of public calamity. Tons of aid and rescue equipment has been sent from the capital Bogota to the disaster zone, and people are picking through the tons of debris, trying to salvage whatever is still usable.
Nadie me da razón, nadie. Nadie me da razón de mi casa.
Nobody has any news, nobody. No news on my house or my family. I'm at the mercy of my God. I have nothing. Nothing to eat, nowhere to sleep. These clothes were given to me.
The scale of the devastation and loss is for many here incomprehensible. They know the chances of survival are slim, but still cling to the hope that their loved ones may still be found alive. Miriam Nahond, Al Jazeera.
Anti-corruption protests continued across Russia Sunday, days after President Vladimir Putin admitted Russia has a problem with state corruption. The protests hit the capital and several other cities, but attendance was notably smaller than the week before, when Russians took to the streets in droves demanding government reforms to tackle the issue. More than 30 protesters were detained Sunday in central Moscow near Triumphalnaya Square, according to state news agency TASS, an area that's become the usual site of the opposition walk.
And Australian authorities have found a third body in the aftermath of Cyclone Debbie. The body of 77-year-old Nelson Rabel was found in floodwaters in the state of Queensland. Police say this raises the national death toll to 3 since the cyclone hit Australia's east coast on Tuesday. Authorities are still searching for another 3 people. Now, Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk said the devastation caused by the storm will take months to repair. Economists estimate Debbie will slow growth in Australia's $1.3 trillion economy to under 2% in the first quarter.
Australia's government passed the new legislation aimed at increasing security measures here last week. Australia's Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation, Darren Chester, said providing the public with safe and secure air travel is a top priority for this government. He went on to say that Australia is aware that the US and UK have recently changed their temporary additional security measures for certain flights from several Middle Eastern and North African countries. The government here has stressed there is no specific threat to this country. The move is simply in line with what the other 2 countries have done. That means people traveling from Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai will be subject to random explosive trace detection screening. The big difference with Australia's new security measures is that there is no ban on electronic devices here used in cabins on passenger flights. Last month, the US and UK governments announced temporary bans on certain non-stop flights from bringing laptops, iPads, cameras, and certain other electrical devices in carry-on luggage. The government here stressed it is in constant contact with its international partners and will increase security measures if needed. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Sydney.
In France, the Chinese community are protesting the way in which a Chinese citizen was killed during a police raid last Sunday. 3 plainclothes police officers raided his home after authorities received reports of a domestic disturbance and a man with a knife. While police said the man attacked them with scissors when they stormed in, his daughter insisted he had simply been cooking for the family. The police officers involved in the case have been suspended for further investigation. After a meeting with Chinese ambassador to France, Zhai Jun, Paris Police Prefect Michel Cadet said progress is being made to improve the safety of Chinese nationals in the city.
If it looks like a race, it's a race to save lives. In their thousands, they're leaving Raqqa. There's a feeling of safety in numbers. They're taking with them what they can as they try to escape the bombing of the international coalition. As the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces get ready for a battle against ISIL in its self-proclaimed capital, locals say that about 200 people have been killed and dozens wounded during airstrikes in the last week. The villages of Al-Mansura, Karatiba and areas between Tabqa and Raqqa have been targeted. There are no accurate estimates in the number of people trying to get out. What is known is there are no local or international humanitarian organisations there to help. All they can hope for is to meet the kindness of strangers. Many have been left stranded where they have no services, faced with the prospect of leaving behind all they've known or staying to face an uncertain future. Some here are getting out of ISIL-controlled areas that are being bombed and heading to other areas also under the group's control, knowing they may be forced to move again to scramble to save their lives as the area prepares for the Battle of Raqqa. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
The images coming out of Colombia's Putumayo region are devastating. It happened in Mocoa just after midnight early Saturday morning. An avalanche of water triggered when 3 rivers overflowed, causing a massive mudslide as residents slept. Entire families were wiped out. Many people are still missing, buried under debris. Survivors described the horror. Some say rocks the size of houses fell on them.
I lost everything. I was able to get the 2 children out of the house, but we lost everything else. It is all rocks and sand.
I'd rather not remember those moments. It's a real trauma because Mocoa was entirely destroyed.
As rescue operations continue, an exact death toll is still hard to confirm. The government has sent more than 1,000 soldiers and police to assist in the rescue operation. Families are trying to find their loved ones.
We have lost a baby who has gone missing, and the rest is as you can see. A little baby. We can't find him anywhere.
I haven't seen her in days. I haven't heard from her. All I know is that her husband grabbed her by the hand, but he couldn't hold on, and the current swept her away.
Food, tents, and clothing are being flown in to help those who survived cope with one of the country's worst natural disasters. Michelle Begues, CGTN, Colombia.
Electricians start rewiring the town of Karakosh. The first signs of reconstruction since ISIL fighters were forced out in December last year. But the services will be of little benefit to the majority Christian community. There's hardly anyone here. Most of the inhabitants fled to Erbil, where they remain. The Sunday service is almost exclusively residents of Karakosh. Christians were a target for ISIL during their occupation, but the parish priest says the community should try to forgive.
Our view on the future is to live again, because the Christian religion has no enemies. Jesus taught us to love our enemies.
Forgetting, however, is quite another thing. Businesses and homes are ransacked or destroyed. The Church of the Immaculate Conception was torched, then turned into a training centre for ISIL fighters. The thick walls almost obliterated by bullet holes. In the courtyard, a pile of ash, the remains of a library of rare Christian texts.
They completely burned it, and this is the place where they were getting trained. And the library of the church is here. They burned everything.
The next village along the road to Mosul is under the control of a Shia militia, unlike Mosul itself, which is majority Sunni Muslim. And sectarian tensions stoked by ISIL could explode once they're gone. As Iraqi forces have moved inside the city of Mosul, the government's been very keen to ensure that it's only government troops and police that lead the charge. But with much of the territory around the city still in the hands of Shia militia, there are growing concerns that after the defeat of ISIL, there could be sectarian violence. That could leave the Christians stranded in Iraq's complicated sectarian landscape, isolated and without friends.
At the moment, I don't want to talk about the Christian view of the sectarian issue, because the Christians have problems with all the other communities. If you don't let the Christians feel safe, then it's impossible for them to return. Absolutely impossible.
For now, the Church of the Immaculate Conception remains a burnt-out shell, waiting for the day its congregation is confident enough to return. Tony Cheng, CGTN, Karakosh, Northern Iraq.
While Colombians will be hoping for a break from the rain, Al Jazeera's weather presenter Richard Angwin explains what's caused the downpours and if the situation is likely to improve in the coming days.
Well, no doubt there are many contributory factors to the disaster which befell the inhabitants of Macau in Colombia. Population growth, infrastructure, denuding of the landscape. But the weather certainly did play a major factor. There's no two ways about it. Now, if we look at the bigger picture, strange things have been going on in the Eastern Pacific. We have had water temperatures at the surface about 3 degrees above what they should be. Now, it's not officially an El Nino. We've only just come off an El Nino. But there's certainly indications that we've got some localized effect going on. And whenever you've got warm water on the surface, it provides energy for big storm clouds. And you only have to take a look at the satellite imagery to see we've had plenty of big storm clouds. So it's not just been confined to Colombia, of course. Ecuador has seen some very heavy rain in recent days. And of course, Peru has got ongoing flooding problems. Well, we take a look at some of the rainfall values, 83 millimetres. I know it's quite a long way north from the affected area, but nevertheless I think it's fairly typical. Now bear in mind that Colombia's had its wettest March since 2011, and all of a sudden you get a rainfall coming in which is well in excess of what you would expect. The monthly total for April should be about 140 millimetres, and here we are looking at, well, more than half that in the space of 24 hours. Could we see further issues? I think over the next few days it's certainly possible. There are plenty of showers around. There are likely to be plenty of showers continuing in the coming days. Whether or not they actually result in any landslides is another matter, but certainly the risk is there.
The negotiations started cordially enough, with the Interior Minister shaking hands with civilian movement and union representatives. We know the crisis in Guyana is deep, he said, and concrete and precise solutions are required. Outside, hundreds of people chanted their support for a new deal for French Guiana, a region where violent crime, high unemployment, and poor social services are endemic.
As indigenous people, we are fighting against illegal mining and for access to healthcare.
The strike has galvanized French Guiana, spurred by a group called the 500 Brothers, who wear black masks to draw attention to the plight of victims of murder and violent crime.
We don't accept the government's proposal. Guyana has suffered more than 50 years of delayed development, and we need real solutions.
Guyana is a multi-ethnic region with a hard history as a former slave colony and then a penal colony. From a territorial point of view, it is France's second largest region, but it is also its least developed, with one exception.
Guyana is home to Europe's state-of-the-art space agency spaceport, from where sophisticated satellites are launched every month. The strikers say what they want is for their entire region to finally take off. By nightfall, leaders of the movement were received from the balcony with chants of "We remain determined." They were told negotiations might last throughout the night. The crowd vowing to maintain the strike as long as it takes, arguing Guyana has been ignored for too long and that it will not be postponed any longer. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Cayenne, French Guiana.
Peru is facing the most serious floods in the last 20 years. Since December, flooding and mudslides have claimed at least 70 lives and left more than 100,000 people homeless there. As Ecuador holds a presidential election, some polling stations have been transformed into emergency shelters. In the most populous Guayas province, nearly half of the region suffers from flooding.
NBC News is reporting that a South Korean cargo vessel is missing after losing contact in the South Atlantic about 15 miles offshore. South Korea's foreign ministry confirmed on Sunday that 22 crew members are unaccounted for. 2 Filipino crew members floating in a life raft were rescued Saturday, but other lifeboats found in the area were empty. On Friday, a crew member sent a text message saying the 148,000-ton ship was taking on water on the port side. The very large ore carrier VLOC Stellar Daisy was sailing from Brazil to China, carrying iron ore when it sent a distress signal to its operator, South Korea's Polaris Shipping, on Friday.
Prince Charles has visited the center of Amatrice, a mountain town that bore the brunt of central Italy's August 24th earthquake. The Prince of Wales was accompanied by the head of Italy's Civil Protection Agency on the tour Sunday that took him to the town's medieval bell tower. The tower survived the August quake, only to be toppled by stronger shocks in October. About 300 people in mountainous central Italy were killed in the magnitude 6.1 August quake. The October temblors were stronger, up to magnitude 6.6, but didn't kill anyone, as the region's most sensitive areas had already been evacuated.
Russia is stepping up its criticism of U.S. military action in Iraq. The country is calling Pentagon comments about civilian casualties in Mosul absurd. Russia's Ministry of Defense issued a statement deriding U.S. comments about the coalition's possible role in more than 100 civilian deaths in Mosul last month. According to the military, the U.S. has expanded its investigation into a formal review of all airstrikes in the area. The probe widened after a U.S. team visited the site of the March 17th airstrike and discovered evidence that the strike hit a house where civilians were located.
Russian police have arrested 29 protesters taking part in an unauthorized rally in Moscow as unlawful demonstrations continue to spring up in cities across the country. City officials have deployed a heavy security detail to quiet the demonstration, setting up metal detectors outside Red Square and blocking access to other regular opposition meeting sites. More than 1,000 anti-corruption protesters were arrested in Russia's capital last week for taking part in unauthorized political activities.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer signed a letter urging President Trump to veto a bill that could allow internet providers to sell information about customer browsing habits. Schumer, along with 46 other Democrats, signed a letter for Trump to, quote, tell us whose side he's really on, end quote. The FCC issued a rule in October designed to give customers greater control over how service providers share information, but critics say the rule would have stifled innovation. Following the approval of the resolution in both the House and Senate, the bill will now be sent to Trump.
A storm system rumbling eastward through Texas toward the lower Mississippi Valley could pelt the region with large hail and cause flash flooding and spawn tornadoes. A Texas state trooper reported seeing a tornado touch down early Sunday morning near Center Point, Texas, northwest of San Antonio, Texas. An Austin, San Antonio trooper reported seeing the tornado touch down at about 8 a.m., but there were no reports of major or structural damage related to the sighting. The head of the Environmental Protection Agency thinks the Paris Climate Change Agreement is a bad deal for the U.S. According to Reuters, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt has not confirmed whether the United States will remain in the Global Climate Change Pact. In the 2015 agreement, nearly all countries agreed to halt or curb their greenhouse gas emissions, including the world's biggest emitter, China. The Trump administration has already taken steps that would preclude U.S. involvement. Last week, Trump signed an executive order rolling back climate change policies like the Clean Power Plan. The plan attempted to slash carbon emissions from power plants, a key factor in the United States' ability to meet its Paris commitments.